Actually, I've ended up with a liver disease and am going to be hospitalized. My husband said the word hospitalized, coming from his serious expression, which unsettled me. When I asked him for more details, he told me that his liver had been damaged by drinking too much and that he might need a transplant. I didn't think it was that serious, so I couldn't reach out to him. My liver's in pretty bad shape, looks like I might indeed need a transplant. I see. I wish I could be a match for a donor. The test results showed I was a match, and eager to surprise him, I hurried to his hospital room. However, the scene that met me as I opened the door was shocking. Yvonne? Oh. You're his wife. You do seem a bit uptight. What? A nurse, or someone who looked the part, said with a mocking expression, clearly indicating their relationship went beyond professional. I felt my heart pounding as I demanded an explanation from my husband. After I get discharged, I'm gonna be with her. You're no longer needed. Can you just leave this room? The betrayal of not just infidelity but also a declaration of divorce was beyond belief. With no sign of remorse from my husband or his lover, I resolved to make them pay, disappearing from their sight as they wished. But what comes of it is none of my business now. My name is Yvonne. I'm a 32-year-old housewife. I met my husband while working at a small to medium enterprises support desk for office products, when he visited as a bank officer, a connection made within the company. I had heard from a colleague's friend that the company had previously taken a bank loan, but he wasn't the officer I had seen, though I was aware of his existence. His cheerful nature made him stand out, easily conversing with everyone at the office, a stark contrast to my serious approach to work, initially sparking jealousy in me. Since he seemed uninterested in me, our interactions at the office were often limited to brief greetings when we passed each other. Hello. Hi. Hope your day's going well. Still, I couldn't help but admire my husband's cheerful demeanor, keeping my feelings of jealousy to myself. I thought having a few close friends at work, just like my colleague's friend, was enough, but unintentionally paying too much attention to my husband might have been a mistake, as it led to a mishap with a client. My boss was surprised and concerned since it was rare for me to make mistakes. It's unusual for you to mess up with clients. I thought it was someone's joke at first. I'm sorry. Oh. I'm not blaming you. You've always been a great help. Can I trust you to handle the fallout? Yes. I returned to my desk feeling embarrassed and angry at myself for causing my boss concern. I had worked harder than anyone for the company since I joined as a new grad and didn't want to be a burden. After staying late to address the issue, I was holding a solo reflection meeting when my husband came to my department and approached me. Are you the bank officer? Do you need something? Oh. Actually, I forgot some documents here. Came to pick them up. I see. I said, looking away from him. I was brainstorming how to avoid future issues on a blank sheet of paper. Then, he spoke up, sounding impressed. Startled, I glared at him, and he apologized with a look of regret. Oh. Sorry. I just thought you're quite diligent. Aren't you forgetting something? You should have other things to do than talking to me. My words might have come off as cold, but it was understandable given my frustration from the work mishap and having someone I harbored jealousy towards nearby. I told myself it was okay to be firm, but looking at his silent reaction, I wondered if I had been too harsh. Then, he said with a smile, "You're really dedicated to your work, huh? I think that's great, but I believe it's also important to take a break once in a while." Right. As if he knows anything about me. I figured he was just trying to be considerate. However, I was in no mood to ponder such thoughts, feeling it invasive for someone I wasn't close with to delve into my personal feelings. That's why I couldn't believe what he said next. His words took me by surprise. You don't believe me, do you? When I've had issues with clients. I've had my share of solo reflection sessions too. What? His words took me by surprise. Given his personality, I had pegged him as the kind to be a mood maker, trusted to lead by everyone, incapable of brooding alone. Yet, as he shared his experience, his expression mirrored mine, convincing me of his sincerity. "If you don't mind, could you share what happened? Talking about it might ease your mind, and you might come up with a good solution." Looking at his earnest face, I found myself agreeing. He went to retrieve his forgotten items, and we decided to have dinner outside while I waited at my desk. I wondered about his intentions. The dining place was a semi-upscale restaurant's private room, making me feel out of place in a setting I wasn't accustomed to. He noticed my discomfort and chuckled, causing me to blush and glare at him. Sorry. It's just that you looked so unaccustomed and cute." "Cute?" I exclaimed louder than expected and got up, momentarily concerned about the stares, though unnecessary in the private setting. I hastily sat back down. From then on, it was all his pace. As I talked about the trouble I was handling, he gave surprisingly precise advice, displaying an intellectual side I hadn't imagined from his usual demeanor. I reconsidered him as a competent man. Perhaps this was his true self all along. Thanks to his advice, the issue was smoothly resolved, so I thought of thanking him. However, he was popular among the employees, and I, who usually didn't speak to him, hesitated to approach, worrying it might be a bother. Finally, the opportunity came. When I thanked him for his help the other day, he responded with a smile, telling me not to worry about it. Just, "Well, how about you invite me out for a meal on your dime next time? That'll be my condition for accepting your thanks." "Understood. I'll invite you sometime." He said he'd wait for my invitation and left the company with a wave. Having no male friends, I was reluctant to dine with him. But feeling worse about owing him, I invited him a week later, and he accepted immediately. Since it was our day off, it almost felt like a date. He was a gentleman with a mature aura, making me feel surprisingly at ease. Despite being jealous of everything about him before, here we were, almost on a date. Our monthly dinners became a regular thing, and a year later, he asked me out. "I was attracted to the gap between your stoicism and the cute way you look when you're upset. I think you and I would make a good partner, so I want you to go out with me on the premise of marriage. Maybe I've been drawn to you too, without realizing it." "Yes. I'd be glad to." And so, our relationship began. He showed me places and things I didn't know, trying to entertain me, which made me feel happy. A few years into our relationship, I even started thinking about marriage, unaware of the happiness that would eventually crumble. After one of our dates, he proposed with a ring as we were about to head home. Of course, my mind was already made up, and I immediately accepted. We were blessed by our parents and colleagues as we held our wedding, feeling surreal throughout the ceremony since I never thought I'd get married. But once we settled on a house and started our life together, the reality of being married suddenly hit me. I decided to aim to be a wife who dedicates herself not just for her own sake, but for my husband's as well. When we got married, it was upon my husband's request that he'd be happy to have someone who supports him, that I decided to become a homemaker. Leaving my job, to which I had been committed and had dedicated myself to the company, wasn't an easy decision. However, being needed by my husband made me happy, and above all, I saw it as a way to repay him for always being kind to me, so I chose to leave my job amidst the regret of my colleagues and employees. My boss told me I could come back anytime, and I was grateful for being valued more than I realized. To think you'd marry him from our client company. And you of all people, that was unexpected. I think so too. Initially, I disliked him, thinking he was a frivolous and light-hearted man, yet here I am, married to him. The world is full of surprises. After thanking my boss for all his support, I finished handing over my work and left the company. Glancing back at the building housing my former office, I felt a sense of loneliness even though it wasn't like I would never return, and hurried home to hide my feelings. Our marriage was going smoothly, with my husband always thanking me and our monthly dining out continuing, and I was hopeful we might even have children someday. However, a year into our marriage, my husband began to change. It was as if he started to see me, a homemaker, as nothing more than a maid, asking me to do chores and complaining about my housework. I couldn't stay silent about this, but when I spoke up, he retorted, "Quiet. You just need to listen to me and do the housework silently. You're a homemaker, so taking care of me should be no big deal." What? You were the one who wanted me to be a homemaker. How can you say that? Is that so? If you hated it that much, you should have just refused. He snorted and started fiddling with his smartphone, avoiding my gaze. What happened to him? I wondered if something had happened at work that made him act this way. But pressing the issue might only worsen his mood and our relationship. I decided to let the conversation go for the day and wait for a better time to ask him about it. However, my husband's domineering behavior only escalated, becoming strict about timing, even complaining if the bath wasn't ready when he wanted. "Didn't I tell you to have the bath ready when I get home? Can't you even manage that simple task? It's not that easy. If I'm doing housework and attending to all the other things you ask for, I just don't have the time. If you have so many complaints, do it yourself." What? Are you saying it's my fault? Are you blaming me too? Another time, when I brought coffee to his study, he complained not only about the time but also about the taste, and he berated me. You might think being a homemaker is easy. I'm tired from work every day, and I'm sick of listening to your nagging. Then, you could at least help me out a bit. I understand being tired from work, or having busy days, but how about taking over some household chores on your days off? What? I want to use my weekends for myself. I don't want to waste time on such things. Now go and remake the coffee. That day, too, our conversation got nowhere, and I silently went to remake the coffee. How did it come to this? The happy days at the beginning of our marriage now seem like a distant past. I tried several times to have a discussion with my husband, but he dismissed the need for any talk, saying a homemaker is like a maid to her husband, and he just played with his smartphone, smirking without paying any attention to me. Moreover, to avoid my questioning, he started going out more often, claiming to have drinking parties, and now it's not uncommon for him not to come home until late at night more than 10 times a month. The once-a-month dinners we used to have together disappeared, which was a shock to me. Considering my husband is a banker, it's not unusual for him to go out a few times a month for drinks, but including his usual behavior, I couldn't help but feel doubtful. Sometimes, when he came home drunk, supported by what seemed like a subordinate from his company, he was especially harsh towards me, and I had no choice but to wait for the storm to pass until he fell asleep. Ah. So cute. Totally unlike my wife. But I'm married, so there's that. What's he talking about? A game, maybe? On good days or when drunk, he would say something similar, but since I once saw him playing a mobile game featuring cute female characters, I felt suspicious but didn't think much of it. Then, one day, my husband came home from work with a serious look and said he needed to talk, calling me to the living room. Actually, I've ended up with a liver disease and have to be hospitalized. What? I was quite shaken by the word hospitalized. I had never imagined him, originally a cheerful person, getting sick, so it hit me even harder. Hearing more from my husband, it turned out his liver was damaged due to excessive drinking, and he might even need a transplant. I couldn't find the words to respond, not having thought it was that serious. I'll be hospitalized for a while and will have to take a leave from work. I plan to use my savings for the hospital fees, but if it drags on, I'd like you to contribute too. Yeah. Seeing my husband, whose domineering attitude had quieted down, looking dejected and staring at the ground, was a first for me. However, we couldn't afford to take our time. If his illness was serious, he would have to quit his job, and with the uncertainty of how long hospital fees would be needed, there were financial concerns as well. Understood. Leave it to me. Despite my dissatisfaction with his behavior, I had decided to support him and didn't want to half-ass it, so I chose to return to work. However, coming back as a full-time employee wasn't realistic because of my husband and our life situation. So, I thought about consulting my boss if I could work from home as a contractor. I see. Our company was actually considering introducing telework on a trial basis, so this timing is perfect. With your track record at the company, I'd say it's more like us asking you for a favor. Thank you so much. Having them understand my situation and being so supportive was incredibly reassuring. I felt relieved after getting a favorable response from my boss over the phone, knowing I had secured a foundation for our livelihood for the time being. This allowed me to work from home and still visit my husband in the hospital 3 times a week, and I saw it as an opportunity to improve our relationship. My liver is in pretty bad shape, looks like I might indeed need a transplant. I see. I hope a donor can be found. The tests indicated that a liver transplant was necessary, and my husband asked me to get tested to see if I was a match. I decided to go through with it because he had confided in me when his hospitalization was determined. Lately, things haven't been going well at work, and I made a big mistake a little while back. I was told to take responsibility by the company. This is the first time I'm hearing about this. Why did you keep it a secret? That's because I didn't want to worry you. Oh, I see. Before becoming domineering, my husband never showed weakness or relied on me for anything. That gradually became a burden and a source of stress for him. He tried to make up for his mistake but failed, and gradually started to turn to alcohol. Even though I wasn't informed, I had no idea my husband was carrying such worries, which made me sure that was the cause of his drastic change. Without knowing. I'm sorry for snapping back at you. It's true that when I couldn't relax because of work, being snapped back at by you at home too, made me feel like I had no place of comfort, so I turned to alcohol. But I wished he had confided in me. I thought marriage was about supporting each other, and maybe in my focus to support him, I hadn't considered his feelings enough. As I remained speechless, my husband concluded. It was wrong of me not to talk to you, but I wish you had considered my feelings too. It's okay. If we made a mistake, we can just start over. These words were more a reminder to myself. While there may have been some issues with my husband's attitude, reflecting on my past behavior made me resolve to communicate better in the future. So when I found out I was a match for the transplant, I rushed to the hospital room intending to surprise him. But then, I stopped in my tracks when I heard voices inside. Though I couldn't make out the conversation, it seemed my husband was talking to a woman, and they sounded quite close. Maybe a coworker? I decided to wait outside until their conversation ended, but after an hour with no sign of them coming out, I had a bad feeling. Preparing my phone, I opened the door to a shocking scene. Yvonne. Oh? You're his wife? You do seem a bit uptight. What? What is this? My husband looked uncomfortable, and the woman, who seemed to be a nurse, looked at me mockingly. It was clear they had more than a professional relationship. As my heart pounded, I demanded an explanation from my husband. What is this all about? Oh, well, if it's out then it can't be helped. I'm going to be with her. Yay! I'm so happy. Contrary to the romantic atmosphere they were creating, my heart was boiling with rage. Mistaking my shock for mere surprise, my husband cruelly suggested we get a divorce. After I get discharged. I'm gonna be with her, so you're no longer needed. Can you just leave this hospital? I felt a destiny with him. Sorry for taking your husband away. Being effectively served a divorce declaration, I reached my limit of frustration, and any love I had for my husband began to cool. Having an affair and showing no remorse is unforgivable. I've heard that extreme anger can lead to a state of calm, but I never imagined I'd find myself in such a situation. Feeling nauseated by the sight of those two being affectionate right in front of me, I resolved to take action and left the hospital room. That resolution turned my husband's hospital room into a battleground. After returning home, overwhelmed by anger and sorrow from being betrayed by my husband, I cried for several minutes. Was I the one who was wrong? However, knowing now that my husband no longer had affection for me, I had no intention of turning back. Regaining my composure, I started preparing for our divorce and my retaliation. A month later, having finished all the preparations, I headed towards the entrance to bid farewell to the house I had shared with my husband, as a final step. Just as I was about to leave, my phone rang unexpectedly with a call from my husband. I ignored it, but after several persistent calls, I reluctantly answered, only to be met with accusations right off the bat. "Why aren't you visiting me? Can't you even bring me my change of clothes or the things I want? My hospital life is difficult because of you. If you're a homemaker, you should at least take care of me properly." "What are you talking about? You said you didn't want to see me, so I did just that." I was surprised by my own cold tone in response to my husband's nonsensical accusations. I thought I might shrink back from his unreasonable scolding, but it seems a month was enough time for me to get over it. My husband sighed in exasperation and began to claim he was only joking back then. "You took my words seriously, that's why you're talking about divorce declarations. I guess choosing her was not a mistake after all." Without being asked, my husband started boasting about her, laughing about how much I lacked in comparison. I thought about hanging up, but his next statement truly shocked me. "Oh right. I heard from her about your being a suitable donor, so count on you, okay?" "What? Really? Not reporting that you're a match, that's a failure as a social being. Don't know how to report, inform, consult, maybe you should redo your education from elementary school? What is this man talking about?" Even though the divorce papers were already processed, I couldn't believe my ex-husband was asking for a donor contribution. Thinking I would remain compliant forever just because I had been during our marriage was a huge mistake. I have not a single organ to offer to a stranger like you. And I'm not so kind as to take care of someone who betrayed my devotion with an affair. Trusting my ex-husband now would be absurd. I vented all my past frustrations, anger, and the sorrow of being betrayed, speaking sharply. My ex-husband didn't expect me to say so much and fell silent, shaken. "Of course, I refuse to donate, and I'm not going to take care of you. Why don't you just be happy with your affair partner?" As I lashed out, my ex-husband seemed to regain his senses, calling me heartless. Whether he had the right to say such things is highly questionable. "To think you'd say that to me, who is still technically family. If I die, it'll be your fault. Would you still refuse to donate?" Family, huh? Initially, I did see my ex-husband as family. But after his transformation into a tyrant who treated me like a servant, I won't let him forget that reality. Bringing up his past actions now, trying to get his way, is too self-serving. "Sorry, but after what you've done and knowing about the affair, I can't see you as family, nor do I want to." "What? What do you think you're doing with someone's life? If I can't return to work, you won't be able to live on your own. I never thought you could be this cold-hearted and cruel." That's my line. I know the value of a human life, and under normal circumstances, I might have been happy to donate. But reality isn't that simple. Especially now, preaching about morality doesn't resonate with me at all. Then, as if on cue, the woman involved in the affair started scolding me in a cloying voice. I think what he's saying makes sense. As a nurse, I'm telling you to just quietly donate. Once that's done, you can go wherever you want. At that moment, any shred of sympathy for them vanished, leaving me with no guilt about the actions I was about to take. Suddenly, from the other end of the phone, I heard the hospital room's door burst open, and both of them exclaimed in surprise. "What's this about? Wasn't he going to marry me?" From the voices, it was clear there were several women present, and my ex-husband was scrambling, saying things that suggested he knew why they were there. This was one of my forms of retaliation. The day after being kicked out of my ex-husband's hospital room, I started to wonder if maybe he had other affair partners. Using a detective and social media, I reached out to other women who might have been victims. Like me, these women had been approached when they were feeling down, invited to meals in various ways, and eventually, it seems, led into relationships without knowing they were falling into a trap. I was foolish to be caught unaware. The women were surprised to find that others around them were also his affair partners. The situation was on the verge of turning into a chaotic scene, but when I explained my intention to retaliate against him, they suddenly quieted down. We've all been betrayed by the same ex-husband. I might not be one to talk, having been married to him, but knowing his true nature. I want to retaliate in a way that inflicts the most damage. I wasn't sure if they would believe me, but it was for the sake of making my ex-husband pay. I begged them, and although it was presumptuous of me to ask for their cooperation so suddenly and without giving them time to organize their feelings, I couldn't just step back and ignore other victims of my ex-husband, nor did I want to give up. When one woman voiced her agreement to help, it spread, and eventually, everyone agreed to cooperate. As preparation for my revenge against my ex-husband, I shared his worst behaviors with them, and as they listened, their faces turned from disbelief to anger, and they said they couldn't forgive him. And that brings us to now. What are you talking about? I don't know you guys. Lies. There's no way I could mistake the face of the person who picked up my wallet that time. It's no use pretending now. We are the victims group of your actions. The representative goes without saying. No way. Realizing that I was the representative of the victims group, my ex-husband, in his shock, seemed to have dropped his smartphone onto the bed. One of the women picked it up and switched to video call to speak to me. Yvonne, there were some unexpected developments, but is it okay if we start? Of course. I wished I could join in person, but even like this, we can still carry out his punishment. Even without my ex-husband's incessant calls today, it was meant to be the day of execution for our plan. His needless chatter ate up our time, and we missed the scheduled moment. However, I could still understand the situation of my ex-husband and the woman he had an affair with through the screen, so I went back to the living room to listen in on the conversation from the hospital room. We all intend to sue you. If you have any excuses, I'd like to hear them. Why don't you try saying something? Well. Just so you know, I won't hold back, so be prepared. Hey, who are these people? Aren't they being too rude to you? That's because, even at this point, the woman involved in the affair showed no sense of crisis, and my ex-husband, pressed by the questions from the victimized women, tried to find the words but ended up saying nothing. However, for some reason, he started to make excuses. It's true I loved you all. But I got involved with various women because of the stress from failing at work. It was never my intention. It was clearly fake crying, and all of us victims were probably dumbfounded. The truth is, the story about failing at work was half true, half false. He tried to make a move on a woman from a client company, got caught by his boss, and was demoted in effect after being removed from his position. I learned this information while searching for other victims from his colleagues, feeling doubly betrayed knowing this. I turned to alcohol, spent days drinking and complaining about work. I met with you all. But that was to distract myself from loneliness. It was necessary for me. Hearing my ex-husband justify himself made me feel sick. It made me wonder if his usually cheerful personality was just a mask he wore to make such excuses, making it even harder to trust anything he said. As he became more talkative, he continued fake crying, stringing together shallow words hoping for forgiveness. Then, I started playing a recording, changing the atmosphere in the hospital room. The recording captured the moment I was thrown out, including their intimate sounds and mentions of the victimized women. It's okay to divorce me, but there are other women who love you, right? Will you properly end things with them? I'm worried. Don't worry, the other women are just for keeping options open. I was planning to break up with them when the time comes. Frankly, they're not my type. I intended to break up with them soon anyway. Despite my being there, they talked as if I didn't exist, so I made sure to record everything. From the moment I was about to open the door to the hospital room, I had my suspicions about my ex-husband's infidelity, but until it was actually confirmed, I wanted to believe in him. I never imagined it would turn out like this, but there couldn't have been more convenient material for my revenge, so I gratefully used it. A morally upright person wouldn't cheat on multiple women, nor treat his wife poorly. And, you seem worried about my living situation, but I'm not struggling because I'm working from home now. What? My interjection seemed to leave my ex-husband speechless for a while, and realizing he had no allies except for the woman he had an affair with, his face turned pale. Watching them through the screen, I felt pity as my ex-husband tried to respond to the woman's encouragement. Well, it's the truth, so it's fine. Let's talk about our future married life instead. I'm looking forward to it. Engrossed in thoughts of life with my ex-husband, she responded to his words without attempting to argue, lost in her own world. Then, another nurse who had heard the commotion in my husband's room came in with the head nurse, shocked by the scene. However, when it became clear that the central figure was the woman my ex-husband had an affair with, they sighed in dismay. After one of the victimized women explained the situation, it seemed the head nurse decided on the spot to fire the nurse involved in the affair. Yay! If his illness gets cured, then I can be the dream housewife, right? Finally, my luck has turned around. She seemed to be celebrating her firing, oblivious to her own situation. This woman's delusion exceeded my expectations. But my ex-husband, in contrast, appeared to be in despair, and I ended the call with a parting shot. Suffer the consequences for disrespecting and betraying women. Perhaps I foresaw the tragic end for my ex-husband. The rest of the story was relayed to me by a friend who happened to be visiting her father in the hospital and witnessed the scene. The woman was fired as a nurse and was sued for compensation by the victimized women, but she seemed optimistic, counting on my ex-husband's earnings. However, my ex-husband's phone rang incessantly, and his boss informed him of his firing due to the affair coming to light. Hearing that, she suddenly changed her tune and proposed breaking up. It was a natural response, considering the risk of damaging the bank's reputation if the affair with a client was discovered. She looked furious, saying things like, it's different from what she thought, and how she was considering marrying him because he was a banker, but in the end, it seems she was only after his money. So, what happened to him? It was pitiful, really. He begged the woman he had an affair with not to leave him, crying and all. However, there were rumors that the woman was already setting her sights on another wealthy patient in the hospital, so she paid him no attention at all. That sort of explained the troubled look on the head nurse's face at the time. I figured it would be something like that. Well, it's his own doing, isn't it? In the end, my ex-husband and his affair partner broke up. As if grasping at straws, he tried to contact me, hoping to reconcile, so I changed my contact information recently. My ex-husband's reputation spread within the industry, and he's struggling to find a new job while juggling part-time jobs to pay the compensation demanded by the women. The other day, I ran into him working the cash register at a grocery store. It made me feel so sick. I've decided never to go to that store again. By the way, what happened to the woman he had an affair with? From what I've heard, she seems to have disappeared. However, I've been informed that the compensation payments are being made, so there's no need to worry. It's no longer my concern, and I have no intention of worrying about them. I'm still in touch with the members of the victims group from that time, and we're determined to become happy enough to laugh about this whole ordeal. I've moved away from the house I lived in with my ex-husband and now enjoy a carefree single life while working from home. I hope that by now, both of them are struggling enough to understand the feelings of those they've betrayed and reflect a little on their actions.